Here is Immortal Moments for explanation. Friends, like videos and subscribes to our channel. Tales of Herding Gods Episode 107 Explanation. So let's start our explanation. Qin Mu's Dao Tai sack always contained all kinds of herbs for emergency, to make sure that he would be able to treat himself when he got hurt. Of course, as a divine physician of a generation, he always had some poisonous herbs as well. Anyway, even if he didn't have any poisonous herbs, he could still create a poisonous substance with just spirit herbs alone. The white bats stood upright like humans, and Qin Mu went forward to check on their injuries. He frowned slightly. The injuries on the two bats' bodies weren't severe. It was their souls that had suffered heavy injuries from the Shaman King's attacks. The great shamans of Roland's Golden Palace used the souls of other living beings, humans included, to cultivate. Even if their spells and divine arts were all-inclusive, their attainments on the divine arts of souls were still the strongest. Their battle divine arts were still slightly inferior compared to them. When Pan Gongso had fought with Qin Mu, he hadn't used the soul divine arts which he was best in. Instead, he used Dao sword and techniques from Little Jade Capital and the rest of the sacred grounds to compete with Qin Mu. This ended up with him losing the upper hand and being miserably defeated by Qin Mu. If he had used the divine arts of the soul, it would be hard to say who would have come out victorious. Qin Mu was uncertain if his heavenly devil creation technique was able to defend the other soul divine arts. Roland's Golden Palace's soul divine arts were called shaman spell divine arts due to being cultivated to the extreme. This was why that place was referred to as the sacred ground on the prairie. The two white bats were struck countless times by the Shaman King's shaman spells, and the lowest cultivation among their opponents was Celestial Being Realm. For the two white bats to be still alive after receiving several attacks from their shaman spells, it showed that the descendants of gods were truly extraordinary. So strong, I will have to apply a heavy dose, Qin Mu muttered to himself. The two white bats were instantly alerted. What did you say? I said your injuries are very heavy, so I have to apply a heavy dose. How should I refer to the two Dao friends? To deal with Pan Gongso and the shaman spells of Roland's Golden Palace, Qin Mu had researched about medicine and nourished his soul. In apothecary's teachings, there wasn't much about shaman poisons that were targeted at the soul, and what wasn't too detailed. Even if apothecary was the poison king, he usually moved around Middle-earth and would rarely run to the prairie, thus he didn't have much understanding regarding shaman poison and injuries to the soul. However, Qin Mu had had a number of encounters with Roland's Golden Palace, so he slowly came his understanding. By combining the 7 writings of creation in great educational heavenly devil scriptures, he researched a treatment that consisted of both herbs and techniques. I'm called Fu Yuqiu, and this is my elder brother Fu Yuchen, the white bat with the longer ears said. When the two white bats saw that Qin Mu didn't need a pill furnace to refine pills and medicine and just used hand techniques and vital qi to extract the medicinal energy out from the herbs while using hand techniques to complete the medicinal roles, they couldn't help crying out in surprise. Physician Bullhead is truly extraordinary, we're dazzled. Not much later, Qin Mu succeeded in refining the first batch of spirit pills. The short-haired Fu Yunchan didn't immediately consume the spirit pills but said alertly, "Apothecary Bull, you shall taste one first." Qin Mu burst out laughing. Brother sure is cautious. My surname is not Bull, my surname is Qin and my name is just Mu. When he said that, he picked a spirit pill and ate it. Only then were the two white bats reassured and ate the spirit pills. Qin Mu then used Ghost Creation Technique and Earth Eon Creation Technique to smack the two white bats to catalyze the medicinal energy and strengthen their souls. The two white bats felt much more comfortable, and their injuries indeed lessened. Qin Mu refined another batch of spirit pills, and Fu Yuchen made him eat one first again. This white bat was much more cautious than his younger brother Fu Yuqiu. Qin Mu complied and ate one spirit pill. Only then did the two white bats eat the rest, healing more of their injuries. At this moment, a few great shamans who had chased until he came attacking without a greeting. The two white bats still had heavy injuries, their external ones having been treated in the least. Qin Mu stretched out his hand and pointed with a finger. Carefree sword rushed out at the great shamans. The great shamans saw the cheap attack and all laughed loudly. How poor is Heavenly Devil Cult's cult master Qin to actually have only a spirit sword of 6 directions realm? Well, it's fine, it'll make it much easier for us brothers to achieve a great merit. Before they could finish their words, a piece of shining white rain came from Qin Mu's back as 8,000 swords moved in unison and rushed into the sky from the Dao Tai sack. The swords turned in the direction of the shamans and rushed over, drowning out their targets with a whoosh. Qin Mu flicked his index finger up, and carefree sword flew back into the sword sheath. The 7,999 swords then soon followed into the Dao Tai sack. At the place where the treasured swords had landed, there wasn't a single complete corpse that could be seen. The 2 white bats stared with their eyes wide open, unable to utter a word. It was a majestic sight when the soldiers of barbarian Di Empire had executed their knife pellets and had countless curved knives slash at the enemies, but this Physican bullhead was actually a 100-man army by himself, sending thousands of swords flying over at his enemies. The great shamans had suffered and died unjustly under his attack. Since these great shamans found their way here, the shaman kings should be close. It's not good to stay here anymore. Qin Mu's gaze flickered, and he said to the 2 white bats, "Dao friends, let us quickly head forward." The 2 white bats followed him while glancing at one another. Fu Yuqiu smiled and asked, "Just now the 2 people said you cult master Qin of Heavenly Devil Cult." Qin Mu sat down on the dragon Chilean's back and continued to refine his spirit pills without concern. "That right. However, we call ourselves Heavenly Saint Cult. We have once met people who called themselves Heavenly Saint Cult in this place. The bunch of golden people who faced them also called them Heavenly Saint Cult. If you are the cult master of humans, are you not from Mars family?" Qin Mu dispersed his Mars sovereign form and regained his true appearance with a smile. "That's right. I'm originally a human, I just used the god transformation of Heavenly Saint Cult to transform into the form of Mars." The 2 white bats salivated, and their hearts were connected. "When our injuries are cured, we'll eat him. We'll eat him rare." Qin Mu finished refining the spirit pills, but he didn't give them to the 2 white bats. He just ate one himself without giving the remaining ones away. Fu Yuqiu was bewildered. "Why doesn't Cult Master Qin give us the spirit pills?" Qin Mu smiled. "This batch of spirit pills is used to detoxify my poison, so there's no need to give any pills to the 2 of you." "Detoxify poison?" Fu Yuqiu quivered and stuttered, What poison?" "Of course it's the poison in the 2 batches of spirit pills I've given you," Qin Mu naturally explained. The faces of the 2 white bats instantly blackened, but just as they were about to pounce on him, they felt their souls turning numb and their bodies convulsing from the pain. The 2 of them collapsed to the ground and twitched endlessly. The dragon Chilean snickered and said, "2 foolish birds, to actually dare to eat Cult Master's spirit pills, truly acting recklessly." The 2 white bats were furious and said in unison while lying on the floor, "Damned Fatty, you're the foolish bird." "Fatty dragon, not all that grow wings are birds, they aren't birds." Qin Mu grabbed the 2 white bats up and placed them on the dragon Chilean's back. "Dao friends." "Bah!" The 2 white bats were very unyielding. "My poison has merely infiltrated both of your souls. It's a new soul poison that I've developed, and both of you are experiencing the first flare-up. After 10 flare-ups, your souls will be torn apart by the unbearable pain." Qin Mu beamed at them. Soul poison is different from normal poison as it reproduces itself in the soul. Each time it flares up, the toxicity will become 10% greater. I have the antidote here which can negate precisely the extra 10% of toxicity. He took out 2 spirit pills and sliced a small piece from each of them, stuffing them into the mouths of the 2 bats. He then gave a smack and smashed the 2 spirit pills into powder. He didn't leave the antidote on his body in worry that the 2 white bats would suddenly make a lethal move on him, killing him to snatch the antidote. Only if he refined the antidote right before the soul poison in the white bats would flare up could he control them. The soul poison in the bodies of the bats was suppressed by the antidote, and the great pain vanished. They stood up with darkened faces. After a moment, Fu Yuqiu said, "We admit defeat, however, we'll only protect you in Ghost Valley. Once you are out of it, we'll go our separate ways. Deal?" Qin Mu agreed without a moment's hesitation and refined another batch of pills, throwing them to the two white bats. He then threw a bottle of dragon saliva to them as well to cure their external injuries while saying, "Apply the dragon saliva on the outside and consume the spirit pills, your injuries will then be basically healed." The two white bats consumed the spirit pills and applied the dragon saliva on their wounds. In no time, their injuries truly recovered almost completely. Fuyuchio's ears twitched, and he warned, "Be careful, there are soul insects underground. Damned fatty, don't step on the ground." Fire clouds immediately appeared under the dragon Chilin's feet, lifting him off the ground. Qin Mu lowered his head to take a look and saw snow-white tentacles having tunneled out from the ground, waving around gently. This kind of wonderful organism was very strange. Twisted faces sometimes appeared on the snow-white tentacles, and they would open their mouths to give off miserable shrieks that attacked people's souls. The two white bats screeched in unison, and the silent sound waves bombarded the ground. Violent tremors instantly came from below, and a huge insect that was covered in tentacles popped up with half of its body above the ground and the other half underground. It was shaken to death by the two white bat sound waves. The bug melted and soon became a pile of water which was absorbed by the soil. When it happened, numerous small humans tunneled out from its body and the faces ran in all directions, turning into wisps of green smoke. Qin Mu was flabbergasted. What was this weird life form? The origins of Ghost Valley are very ancient. I've heard from my ancestors that this is a place which is connected to Yudu. The ancient gods had opened a path to another world, the Yudu world, Fu Yuchen explained. This ended up letting some things from Yudu to run in. The gods had spent painstaking effort to seal this place, and our white-back god race was ordered to stay guard here, to not let the life forms of Yudu to break through the world barrier and enter this place. However, in our generation, it's only us two brothers left. The two white bats looked at each other with bitter expressions. Both of their faces wrinkled until they were like two dried-up mandarins. They were both male, and how to reproduce future generations had become their biggest problem. Qin Mu was stunned for a moment, then said, "I didn't expect our friends to be the guardians of this world. However, you're both brothers and male. Who will guard Ghost Valley after you die?" "Don't mention it," the two white bats said in unison. "All right then." Qin Mu didn't talk about this again and instead asked, "Do you still remember the incident 16 years ago? Did something like a meteor come from outer space, crashing into this place?" "There was such an incident. The unknown thing had penetrated through the seal left behind by our ancestors of white-back god race," Fuyuchio said. "We had gone to take a look before, but that place was very dangerous. Some people came afterward and we ate a few of them. However, there were more who went in deeper, but few of them came out." Qin Mu's spirit was greatly roused, and he asked immediately, "What fell from the sky?" "A ship. Half of it is now stuck in Yudu and the other half in the ground here." "A ship? Could it be from Carefree Village?" Qin Mu was slightly excited. Village chief and the rest had found an incomparably enormous ship, but it was destroyed so they couldn't go to Carefree Village. If this ship was from Carefree Village, wouldn't he be able to go to his hometown? The two white bats led the way in a strange temper. They flew around silently, so if Qin Mu was not careful, he wouldn't notice where they had flown. The next moment, there would be some rustling and the two bats would hang down from a tree or cliff before flapping their wings away silently. The life forms in the Ghost Valley were incomparably peculiar, and their attacks were very strange. However, as the two white bats were the guardians here, they knew every detail about this place. With them leading the way, Qin Mu's journey was free of any danger. Sometimes, the two brothers would even capture the strange life forms in Ghost Valley to eat them. When luck comes, nothing can stop it, to actually meet a Bora turtle. Qin Mu saw the two brothers flying above a lake before diving into the water to drag out a behemoth. It was a hexagon-shaped insect with weird hexagon markings on its body that had a regular pattern. At the front, it had two huge pincers that were very powerful. There were white insect eggs that were the size of a human on its back. Some of the eggs had already opened, and it looked like someone had neatly opened them from the outside. That Bora turtle's abilities were astonishing, and it wasn't willing to be carried away by the two brothers. Its pincers rushed forward and caused thunderous explosions. Bolts of lightning appeared from compressed air, and lightning crackled while surrounding the Bora turtle. It was a terrifying sight. The Bora turtle even spewed out toxic liquid which melted everything on the ground, be it soil or rock. Qin Mu's heart shuddered. The abilities of this Bora turtle were not weaker than those of the dragon Qin. The toxic liquid was especially terrifying since it could melt everything. The abilities of the dragon Qin were strong, and he was situated between Seven Stars Realm and Celestial Being Realm. However, even Celestial Being Realm wouldn't be able to withstand the toxicity of the Bora turtle. The abilities of the two white bats were even stronger, however. The impact of the sound waves from Fu Yuchio's mouth made the Bora turtle dizzy from the vibration. The two brothers then jumped onto the Bora turtle's back and opened up two insect eggs as if they were opening doors in eggshell pods. The two white bats jumped in and moaned. They then waved at Qin Mu and the dragon Qin. Come in quickly. Qin Mu hesitated before bringing the dragon Qin onto the Bora turtle's back. Fu Yuchen popped his furry head out from the eggshell like a rat that was just born and twitched its ears. Find an egg and quickly hide in it, since this Bora turtle is about to wake up. This fellow is an expert in swimming and the Overlord in the water. He will bring us to the river from the lake and swim toward the deep pit in the lake. Its nest is there. Qin Mu hesitated. Can't I stand on its back? This fellow is very alert, but his love for his children is the greatest. If we hide in these eggs, he won't attack us. Also, any other things that attack us will be killed by it, Fu Yuchen explained. Qin Mu looked at the dragon Qin and asked, can you shrink your body? The body of the dragon Qin was only 6 yards smaller than the Bora turtle, so he definitely couldn't hide in an egg with his current size. The dragon Qin snorted and shook its body, causing it to shrink slowly. Cult Master is underestimating me. I was taught by Patriarch, so of course, I can change my size at will. He shrunk to the size of a huge dog, which was his limit. With his big tummy, he continued to execute the technique, but to no avail. After a moment, he mumbled, Cult Master, do you think this is okay? Qin Mu looked at the ball-shaped fellow and picked the biggest egg. He opened the cover and carried the dragon Qin up, trying to stuff him in. It's been a while since I got carried, the dragon Qin said while reminiscing about the past. Qin Mu forced the guy's tummy in and pushed down with strength, but the dragon Qin was stuck and couldn't go in any direction anymore. Qin Mu was furious and placed the white egg-shaped cover on the dragon Qilin's head. Stay in this position and don't move. The dragon Qin didn't dare to move with the shell on his head. He said pitifully, Cult Master, you won't decrease my food, right? I'm still growing. Qin Mu opened up an eggshell for himself and jumped in. There seemed to be something like egg white inside and it was actually very comfortable. It was the feeling of consuming spirit pills and spirit medicines. He could feel some fine energies entering from his pores and going into his muscles, blood vessels, meridians, 5 viscera, and 6 bowels, nourishing his body, hair, and skin. Those energies even entered his soul and nourished it. Qin Mu stood with astonishment and tried to execute Overlord Body 3 elixir technique and instantly felt even more energy coming from the egg white, allowing his primordial spirit to grow stronger. This egg white is better than any spirit pill or miraculous medicine. If I could hide inside here to cultivate for a very long time, my primordial spirit would probably become abnormally strong. He looked toward the other eggs and saw that most of them were already empty. It was most likely that the other Bora turtles had matured and left the shell. There were only 2 to 3 other eggs that had yet to mature. Good stuff, I shall steal these eggs when we reach our destination. Just as he thought this, the huge Bora turtle woke up and swayed its head before diving back into the lake. This lake was one of the tributaries of the rivers, and as the Bora turtle dived into the water, it swam into the mainstream and went with the river, swimming to the place where 2 rivers converged. The water of this river was very strange. There were all kinds of Yudu life forms living in it. There was a long insect with eyes over its whole body, a huge fish that had muscles and no scales on its body, a weird insect that was covered in tentacles with mouths with hooks at their ends, and also some things that were floating around like souls. Qin Mu also saw some lotuses floating on the river surface. Some of them had withered and grew out a lotus seed head. From that seed head came out white and chubby babies. Their buttocks were bare as they danced around and giggled, looking pure and innocent. Suddenly, one of the babies opened his mouth wide, and a 20 yards long tongue swung out and wrapped around a weird fish in the water. The tongue then swung back into the air, and the baby ate the weird fish in an instant, leaving only fish bones to sink into the riverbed. Once that baby was full, he once again danced and giggled. Soon though, a huge bird dived down and picked the baby up, raising its head to swallow him down. What are all these monsters from the world of Yudu? Qin Mu shuddered. Finally, this Bora turtle brought them to the deep pit that the two white bats had mentioned. Instead of being called a deep pit, it would be better described as an abyss. The two rivers converged there, and water descended down into the abyss, rumbling continuously. When they were about to drop into the abyss, the Bora turtle suddenly leaped out of water and into mid-air. With a swoosh, it opened two hard wings and below which were two soft wings. The latter were sharp like razor blades. They trembled and hummed as the turtle flew down, straight into the abyss. Qin Mu and the rest were thrown against the insides of the eggs, which were stuck on the hard wings. When the Borel turtle flew, the hard wings didn't move, only the soft wings were flapping continuously. From inside the egg, Qin Mu looked around and saw huge mushrooms hanging on the walls of the abyss, spewing spores. They glowed and floated in the air like dandelions. Huge fish sometimes jumped out from the raging waterfall to eat the glowing spores. The moment they did that, their bodies would swell in mid-air and explode. Huge mushrooms would then grow out from their bodies. Those mushrooms were very weird. They only exploded the lower half of the fish or the insects, leaving the upper part of their bodies fine. Due to that, the creatures were still alive. Only their aesthetic appearances had been destroyed, since their lower bodies had become mushrooms. Long roots grew out from the mushrooms, and they flailed around in mid-air. Some of them landed on the cliffs and immediately grew their roots there. The fish and insects that were then growing from the mushrooms helped to hunt, creating a strange kind of symbiosis. The Bora turtle continued to fly downward with the illumination of the weird mushrooms. They were the only ones that prevented the abyss from being totally dark. After countless miles downward, they finally came to the bottom of the abyss. It was very humid there, and the surroundings were filled with glowing crystal pillars. They were translucent and sparkling, with a charming shine that lighted up the entire underground. The Bora turtle had built a nest on a piece of a huge crystal pillar and landed there. Just as it did so, it was once again stunned by Fu Yuchio's sound waves. Qin Mu, who had absorbed all the energy inside, jumped out from the egg looking refreshed. He immediately went forward and plucked the other 3 eggs that were still full, putting them into his Daotai sack. "Cult Master, I can't get out," the dragon Qilin called over pitifully. Qin Mu went forward and pulled on the dragon's 2 ears, spending out all his strength to pull him out. He said angrily, "If you continue to be so fat, I'll start feeding you dirt." "I'm just a little sturdy, I'm not fat," the dragon Qilin muttered in a small voice. The 2 white bats flew upward silently and said, "The ship crashed from outer space and created this deep pit. When it reached underground, it slid quite a distance more and cracked the barrier sealing Yudu. That ship is right in front, not much farther away. However, most of Yudu's life forms are living there. By following the underground stream, we will be able to reach them." Qin Mu followed the 2 white bats, and they really didn't walk far before seeing corpses washed up on the shore. They belonged to Roland's Golden Palace's strong practitioners, and based on the body's state of decay, they should have died not long ago. Qin Mu had the 2 white bats to lead him, so he didn't meet any danger, but if he had wanted to cross Ghost Valley and reach this place by himself, it would have been much more dangerous. Those that reached this place were basically all experts, and the lowest of them would be on 7 Stars realm. It was a pity though that they couldn't see the ship before they died. Not a long time later, Qin Mu saw some skeletons and from their belongings judged them to be disciples of Heavenly Devil cult. He sighed and was about to pick up a few stones to bury them when the stones suddenly ran away, vanishing with a plop into the river. They walked ahead then, until suddenly they heard a Buddha voice lingering in the space underground. Not much later, they came to where the Buddha voice was coming and saw 2 old monks in yellow robes sitting cross-legged on stone pillars. 2 shrines had been chiseled out from the stone pillars, and the 2 old monks sat there with their long eyebrows hanging out of the shrines. Buddha voice rang continuously from their bodies, while the Buddha rays were sometimes bright and sometimes dim, defending against the devil chi surging over. Great Thunderclap Monastery's monks, Qin Mu said in astonishment. They are already dead. The 2 White Bat brothers were also astonished. Fu Yuchio said, these 2 bald donkeys ran here with their extremely high abilities. They had said that they came here on Rulai's order to help us suppress the unusual movements from Yudu, preventing Yudu's life forms from running out to harm all living things. We were not happy, but we couldn't defeat them, so we let them stay here. They sat here for over 10 years and helped us quite a lot. There were a few times the seal had almost been broken and they helped us suppress it. Never would I have expected for them to die from exhaustion. Fu Yuchen sighed. We once thought they were delicious, but now I don't want to eat them at all. That ship that fell from outer space is right in front. Qin Mu raised his head to look over and his body trembled slightly. The space underground was vast, and there was a mountain in front which looked like the upper body of a giant sculpture. It was incomparably huge, and its whole body was covered in pitch-black rocks, but the nose, eyes, mouth, and ears were all sculpted in detail. Since only the upper body could be seen, the lower body had to be buried in the ground. Otherwise, not sculpted at all. Behind the sculpture, an ancient ship floated in mid-air. Half of it was in the space underground while the other half had gone through a huge gate. There were beehive seals on it, but the bow of this ship had pierced through them, entering the other world. That seal had to be the Yudu seal that the white bats had mentioned. The ancient gods must have opened a passage from the real world to Yudu world which resulted in the invasion of life forms from Yudu, so the gods had no choice but to seal this place. The white bat god race had then been ordered to stay guard, and life was peaceful around there until the ship arrived and broke the seals. From the looks of it, the seals were loosening, especially at the place where the ship was touching upon them. Numerous cracks had appeared there. Not only that, there was also the problem of the life forms of Yudu entering great ruins through the ship. Strangely shaped, they would come down the ship from time to time. Some spread their wings to fly while others jumped down from the ship. However, they didn't make it far before the beehive seals would flash with a bright light, silently severing the heads of those life forms. A huge god sculpture, gate, a large ship, beehive seals, Yudu's life forms, this underground world seemed to be grotesque and variegated. This gate looks a little familiar. Qin Mu examined the huge gate up and down, feeling that he'd seen it somewhere before, yet he couldn't remember where he had seen it. How did the 2 eminent monks die? He frowned slightly. The abilities of the 2 eminent monks were way superior to those of the 2 white bats, and ever since they came to guard this place under Rulai's orders, everything had been peaceful, so why had they suddenly died? The 2 white bats said that they had died from exhaustion, but from the looks of it, there was more to it than just that. For the corporeal bodies of the old monks to be able to defend against the devil chi of Yudu with their Buddhism after the 2 monks had died, their abilities had to have reached an extremely high realm. Even if they weren't cult masters of Divine Bridge realm, they couldn't have been far from it. It would be difficult for such existences to die from exhaustion against the invasion of the devil chi. Could it be that there were some terrifying life forms which entered this world through the ship and killed the 2 old monks? Or was it because something had attacked the seals furiously and the 2 monks had exhausted themselves to death by using all their power to defend? No matter what it was, this was not a good thing. If Qin Mu was to approach the ship, he was certain that there would be dangers hidden one beneath the other. Yudu, the world of Earth Count, the place where the souls belong. The envoys of Earth Count guide the souls that have died in this world to Yudu, and they are the messengers of death. I once saw messengers of death, and they are the strange elders folding paper boats in the darkness of great ruins. Even though they are strange, they are considered peaceful. As long as one doesn't interfere with their tasks, they won't cause trouble to the living. Qin Mu examined the surroundings. It seemed that the Yudu world of Earth Count had its own unique rules and regulations. The messenger of death operated according to them, and Earth Count didn't interfere with the real world. In that case, what were all these Yudu life forms in Ghost Valley? They were powerful, strange, demonic, sinister, and even more evil than the heavenly devil horde Qin Mu had met before. Compared to Yudu life forms, heavenly devil horde would still be considered kind. The Yudu life forms and the messengers of death were two extreme opposites. He looked up at the ship, which was not in the sky and not on the ground. The beehive seals had fixed it in place, and the hexagon pillars were inlaid in the air, layer upon layer. They were translucent like colored glass, forming the seal that was left behind by the ancient gods. However, there was devil chi and other strange auras leaking out from the ship, and an unnerving sound could be faintly heard coming from inside there. It was like numerous damned souls that were suffering in Yudu were screaming. Qin Mu composed himself, and his body suddenly trembled. He transformed into a creature with the snake's body and a scroll in its hand while the gate of heaven influence appeared behind him. His snake tail slithered forward, rising up into the sky, avoiding the god's sculpture in front to enter the ship. The two white bats jumped in shock and immediately flapped their wings to examine Qin Mu curiously. Transformed, he has transformed again. He was a cow, then he turned into a human, and now he has turned into a snake. This door is weird, let me go in and take a look. Fu Yuchen said curiously, planning to push open gate of heaven influence to take a look. Behind the gate is the Yudu world. If you want to die and let your soul enter Yudu, you can go and open the gate. Qin Mu said sternly. When he said this, his heart trembled violently as he paused in midair while looking at the huge gate in front of him in a daze. Gate of heaven influence. This gate that was sealed by the beehive was a gate of heaven influence. Since that was so, then what was the sculpture? Qin Mu turned his head back with difficulty and looked at the sculpture of the god. Didn't the sculpture and the gate of heaven influence match Qin Mu's current appearance? This is not a sculpture, it's someone who has perfectly cultivated the form of Saturn sovereign, like me. Qin Mu's mind was blown. Even though the form of Saturn sovereign always had a human head and snake's body, not everyone could cultivate gate of heaven influence and the scroll in hand. Even Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, who was known as the saint that appears once every 500 years, had not managed to cultivate this form. This was the most perfect form. Qin Mu had once thought that this was the symbol of Overlord body and also the reason for his confidence that Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor could never be as strong as him. And now, he met another existence that had succeeded in cultivating gate of heaven influence. Is this an ancient Overlord body? Why is he petrified? Why has he turned into such a state? Qin Mu stood in the air silently and looked at the god sculpture. But it wasn't a god sculpture, though. It was a god in Saturn Sovereign's form that was petrified. Half of his body should be buried underground. His gate of heaven influence had become the gate which linked Yudu and the real world, but it was hard to say why the gate had lost control. This resulted in the life forms of Yudu flooding out from the door and creating havoc in the real world, thus the ancient gods had no choice but to seal this gate. In that case, how was he petrified and who petrified him? Qin Mu was slightly puzzled. What had this ancient Overlord body encountered to fall into such a state? Why didn't Gate of Heaven influence close and vanish after he died? Why had it become a gate between Yudu and reality? The white bat said the ancient gods had opened a gate between Yudu and reality, but what did that mean? Did the two bats know about the incident that had happened back then? Qin Mu composed himself and abandoned all the messy thoughts in his head. He turned his body around and slithered toward that ship. Many things that the current generations viewed as strange had happened in the years before the disaster of Great Ruins. Those incidents had long become histories that lay in the dust, turning into mysteries that were waiting for the future generations to uncover the truth. Qin Mu was still very weak though and didn't have the ability to uncover the secrets behind everything. He flew at the ship from outer space, carefully closing in on it. The closer he got, the more he felt the immensity of the ship. Of course, when compared to Sun Ship and Moon Ship, this ship wasn't considered anything, but when compared to Eternal Peace Empire's flying ships, this one was way larger. This ship didn't seem like it was something from the mortal realm. There were all kinds of strange runes imprinted on its body. Even though many of the runes had been destroyed, there were still some runes that flashed with life once in a while. Between the lighting up and going out, the shapes of the runes would change. If Qin Mu observed them in detail, he was likely to conjecture some marvel from their transformations. However, he had no time to observe the rune markings. He secretly boarded the aft of the ship and saw many parts of the ship that were already destroyed. The main body was still intact, though. The beehive seals left behind by the ancient gods didn't target him or the bats. Those seals should only be targeted at Yudu life forms and pose no threat to life forms of the real world. Qin Mu landed on the ground. Behind him, the dragon Qin and the 2 white bats had also landed on the deck. There was green liquid everywhere on the deck, giving off a faint glow. Qin Mu accidentally slithered into one puddle and immediately dodged to one side. He discovered that silk-like objects was being pulled out from the sticky liquid. Fuyuchio grabbed a handful of sticky liquid and took a sniff. It should be the remnants of the killed insects. The dragon Qin shook his body and balls of true fire flew out, burning away all the sticky liquid on the deck. Suddenly, a ball of devil chi flew out from the bow of the ship, and the true fire of the dragon Qin was instantly extinguished. Fuyuchio and Fu Yuchen hurriedly flashed to the front of Qin Mu, opening their mouths to give off silent screeches which clashed with that devil chi. Boom! An unimaginably huge force came sweeping over to blow the 2 white bats away. Even Qin Mu and the dragon Qin behind them were lifted up into mid-air. Each of them landed on the ground and looked ahead with worry. The darkness flooded forward as if it had a consciousness, closing in on them. The dragon Qin growled and trembled. Crackles came out from his body as he expanded, and the dragon scales gave off piercing sounds as they scraped against each other. In an instant, he revealed his true form and transformed into a half-dragon half-Qin behemoth. Flames and lightning burst off from his body and surged toward the depths of the ship. The dragon Qin opened his mouth, spewing out flames and lightning. His abilities were superb, and even experts of Celestial Being Realm would have to temporarily avoid the cutting edge of this strike. However, it landed into the flooding darkness like a clay ox entering the sea, making no ripple at all. The 2 white bats flapped their wings and spun in mid-air. The fine white hair on their bodies instantly flew out like rain, shooting into the darkness like countless white needles. After that, the 2 bats called the hair back, yet no matter what they did, the hair wouldn't come back. For an instant, they were like 2 huge rats that had shed all their hair, standing in the open and shivering. The darkness still continued to pour forward at a pace that was neither fast nor slow. A gentle laughter came from inside it and said something incomprehensible. It wasn't a god's voice, nor was it a devil's voice, and it definitely wasn't a Buddhist incantation. Suddenly, Qin Mu's expression changed slightly, and he spoke the only Yudu words he knew. The darkness suddenly halted and stopped flooding toward them. Instead, it rapidly retreated. Countless fine hairs flew back and returned to the bodies of the white bats, making them seem like hedgehogs. The 2 white bats were bewildered, but they immediately trembled their bodies to allow their white hair to enter back into their paws. This video is end here. Like the video and subscribe to my channel.